All right. 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check. Are we ready? All righty then. Let's go down to business. WBO Heavyweight Championship. Less talk, more words. Let's get down to business for the heavyweight champion of the world. So, I do like to point out one thing. The last time the WBO belt was fought was during the first week of May when Daniel Dubois defeated Fabio Wardley, who should have been the winner of the fight because Wardley versus Usyk would have been a good fight. And let's be honest, if Wardley did got out of that fight in the 11th and the 12th and final round, and some of the judges were generous to him, and he won the fight, I don't know if it would have been a good fight to see him and Usyk. But again, the money was on the line, so again, who knows? I'm just saying, let's just assume that Wardley defeated Dubois in the 9th of May, depending how the scorecards would have been, or if they would have went to a technical decision after, let's just assume it was 9 rounds, and Wardley managed to win a couple 10-9 rounds or something. If British were allowing technical scores, which maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Again, some of the commissions out there still confuse me to this day. I don't even know why they even let the fight continue with Wardley's face being that mangled up. Again, that's not the point. All I know is that's the last time they've ever held on to the championship belt here. So with all that being said, this is the information we have. So before we talk about the story of the WBO, the start of the first title fight, which took place back in 1989, all the way from 1999, we do have to talk about some of the reports that are happening right now. So as of today, Eddie Hearn on Tyson Fury's pointed out that more rounds isn't going to help him beat Anthony Joshua, Eddie Hearn stated. Well, at the end of the day, it's still going to be an entertaining fight if we just see those two past prime fighters just fight each other. It's better than later. Again, I can't say much about it in compensation, but they should do it just for the heck of it. Also today, as I'm recording this video, Zuffa Boxing will host the event in Dublin. Is that Dublin, Ireland? On August the 8th. Yes, it is Dublin, Ireland. That's going to be crazy. Trying to look up information on to Zuffa Boxing here so we can go on to BoxRec. I might as well look up Jayo Pataya's record here just for safety reasons. Considering where Zuffa Boxing is from, if BoxRec does allow it. Yes, Dana White does have his name on BoxRec. And wow. This is pretty interesting. So Dana White, so this is the first time I'm looking this up right now, but since 2008, Dana White, in an 18-year of promoting professional fights, has promoted 365 events total. Well, no, he didn't. On promotion, it does say that, but again, trying to double check. No, it doesn't say that. Interesting. Okay, I'm trying to get onto him on BoxRec here, but so this really confuses me. BoxRec almost has a broken system or something because it says that promoter has 365 events on Dana White. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But it says the first one was in 2017, and then the second one came in 2022. Let me just count how many promotions are in the list here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25. So Dana White has promoted 33 shows in BoxRec, but in BoxRec it has 18 pages, but only 2 of them show his record. So technically, Dana White started his pro. Wow. So Dana White did actually been involved in the promotion on August the 26th in 2017, the same exact show when Floyd Mayweather defeated Conor McGregor and Gervonta Davis won the vacant IBF World Super Featherweight Championship. No, he didn't, because he was stripped of the title because he was missing weight. So his opponent, Francisco Fonseca, he was the only one having the title on the line that day. So, nope, it was a vacant title. Interesting. Okay. And that's also the same night when Badu Jack actually won his second weight class by winning the light heavyweight championship belt that same night. Interesting. Wow. And also the same night when Savannah Marshall made her pro debut. Whatever. So technically, guy like Tom Brown and Leonard Ellerby and Dana White were promoters of the show, but I don't know who Dana White was promoting, so that's kind of strange to see Dana White involved in that show. But yeah, on November the 30th, 2022, which I do remember this, Dana White did promoted a show in Nevada Athletic in Las Vegas, Nevada, in the Meta Apex. He's promoted a lot of shows there, which involved slap. You know the situation where you have to hold on to something stick like this and put behind your back and then just not flinch while someone's just ready to slap you like this and then boom like that. And then it's your turn to slap someone else back. That's what this whole entire show was. There's multiple. It's ridiculous. Oh, wow. Someone named Alex Asbury defeated Waylon Frost by a round 2 DQ finish? How did his opponent, Waylon Frost, got disqualified in a pro slap fight? Gonna have to look that up. Interesting. But again, that's the point. So Dana White, these were just the slap league, power slap leagues, which I do know Dana White did promote these from 2022 to 2024. And man, there's a lot to it. I don't know. He even promoted so much slap leagues that by October the 31st, last year ago, he promoted his last one in Saudi Arabia, known as Power Slap 17, which involved not much, but pretty much not enough competition here. Again, it's just slap, slap, slap. And we even have we have a Hungarian woman named Sheena Bathory. Sheena Bathory, a Hungarian woman known as the Hungarian Hurricane. And her face, people say the Hungarian women are somewhat attractive and young. Ask VTuber Squchan about that. To be honest, I don't even know what VTuber Squchan's face looks like in real life. I don't even think she ever released pictures of herself online. But if there is photos of face reveal of Squchan, don't ask me. I better try to look that up myself just for the heck of it. You know what? I'm going to look up Squchan's face reveal right now because I think it's better for me to look it up. But yeah, this female Hungarian has a record of 4 wins, won by knockouts, undefeated, living in Miami, Florida, known as the Hungarian Hurricane, Sheena Bathory. And surprisingly, she has a second round KO, and her second pro fight also ended in a DQ finish, only for her to win a fight by a rematch, and then against someone named Robin with a Y. And that's about it. So that right there. You know what? I'm going to look up Squchan's face reveal right now. And before we talk about the WBO belt, I know I should be talking about that right now, but again, talking about Dana White and his entire promotion, and now by the way, Dana White did his first ever pro boxing event back in January the 23rd this year. So he's already promoted. Wow. Oh, he even promoted another power slap last March, and then a ninth. Wow, he's still promoting once in a while power slaps. That's crazy. His last one was last April. He's already promoting out 8 Zuffa boxing shows. And his next one on the 28th will be interesting fighters and former champions. So good luck with that. Okay, let's talk about Squchan's face reveal and try to get some information here. And, oh, interesting. VTuber. Oh, we have a face of a blonde woman here. Interesting. We have another information here. Huh. Oh, we got a little bit of an update. Oh, wait a minute. We just got an archive of something here. We have an online site here that goes by the name of Shire Fallon, which is also Squchan's name, on a website called Squchan. Let me type this one in. I just went on to some illegal, no, not illegal. I just went on to some inappropriate site here that involves XXX. Huh. Don't tell me Squchan is doing naughty stuff online, because this is not what I intended to look up. Let me find something else around here. It's going to be interesting to try to find something that I should have done a long time ago, but again, I'm not trying to look up VTubers. I'm just looking up about this history of the WBO, and now we find a Hungarian woman that's a professional slapper by Dana White's promotion, and now I'm looking up a VTuber's face reveal. I just found one that looked like Squchan's face, but we have another online site. So I'm on a site called pineflix.com. Again, I can't find nothing there. So I'm on another site called fapello.com, Fapello, and we have face reveal here. Wow, Squchan's face is really wow. Okay, I'm gonna put this stuff in the description below. On my description below, if you guys want to click on that, I'll put a timestamp here. You know what? I'm going to save this site and click on for description so I won't forget about this as I'm editing this video. We're at 12 minutes and 30 seconds right now. We got a photo of Squchan, and her face is more attractive than Sheena. Which goes to show you why she has not been slapped once. Wow. Okay. Oh boy, don't show me that. I don't want to see that stuff. I just want to look at photos of Squchan. And no. Get me out of here. So we have 55 photos. What is this first one?
Hold on. Oh, hold on. For this, I can explode my skirt. Oh, yeah.
Don't tell me. Don't expose yourself, please.
Oh, shit. My skirt. Ah! Don't look. Don't look. A lady would never share. Oh my god, you looked, didn't you?
Unless if you're Hungarian, yes. If you're Japanese, double yes. Okay, that's not what I meant to see. Okay, we just have a lot of photos of her legs, and oh, hey, here's one. Here's some photos of Squchan. Wow. Those are some interesting Squchan photos I'm really surprised about. Hey, here's one of her having a mustache. Look at that. She has a mustache. Wow, what a great edited photo here. And look, there's even a guy in the... Wait, is this a coffee restaurant or something? There's a thing called King, and there's a person in the background. Wait, those have to be pies. Is Squchan in a pie restaurant or something? And what's with this image of a black tree or something? Interesting. You have something that says hours open and such from 7 a.m. to something p.m. Interesting. Looking at some interesting photos here. Dude, look at Squchan's face. It's so ridiculous. Even with her mustache, she has that ridiculous mustache thing here that goes up like that. That's ridiculous. Wow, she looks really good looking with the black mustache on, which is kind of crazy. Oh boy. Okay, so here's these remaining photos. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So photos 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and also number 10, because I guess Squchan went to a convention called Crun EX or something, Artists Expo or something. It said Expo on her tag. She's holding on to a card called Expo Artists and holding on to an anime photo covering part of her nose and her face with blinking, with her left eye blinking for some reason. I guess she's in a convention or something. Interesting. This is pretty interesting. Wow, man. I'll be honest right now. I didn't know Squchan was a blonde woman, and because I think all VTubers have brown hair or dark brunette hair, because VTubers are Asian. Not all of them, except like other like British VTubers I've heard of and German VTubers and such. But a lot of them just have dark hair. And the ones that do dye their hair, which I think Battle Whale, because I think Battle Whale once had dark hair, but then she dyed it brown. I once saw a couple other images of her of having really short hair, which was somewhat of a bright color. So I guess they dye their hair color. Same thing is for Tricky. Their friend Tricky also dyes her hair color as well in some of her videos to be half sort of a mixed color. But no, Squchan does have a look of her VTuber avatar, which I did not know Squchan was a blonde woman. So yeah, looking at these photos is great. Like, look at the second photo she has. Dude, this second photo of her almost looks like she's in the shower and she's plinking her two cheeks like this for some reason, going like for some reason. Wow, her hair is pretty different. She has an interesting look on her face. Wow, her hair and look at she's even wearing a bikini in image number 9, and there's actually an old man next to her in the background, and he doesn't even realize that there's a VTuber next to her. Ridiculous. Oh my gosh, man. This is the archive of video here. I know that Squchan changed her name from Shirey Fowlin to Squchan, which I didn't know that because I did saw her first ever video on YouTube, which was in her intro titled that. So, and look at that. You can even see, like, she's even wearing sunglasses and a top hat and a bra and such. But that's not the point. You can even see her, like, I don't even know what she's looking at. The only thing I could see from those tinted glasses is her holding her phone like this, smiling to the viewers. Again, I don't even know if I can see anything. I don't know, I'm trying to get close to her glasses because it seems like, man, she really has a baby face. Man, maybe I should shave right now after I'm done with this podcast. Wow, man, this is an assortment of great, exciting content. I'm really pleased to see Squchan as who she is. She's actually a really beautiful woman for what she is. Yeah, so I'm going to put this on the site. It's going to be called fapello.com/Squchan that whatever that initial thing is, this and that or something. I don't know what that thing is called. It's I should have looked it up, but anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna put this on the description, so people, if you're watching this, don't be confused on why I have this in the description. It's just because I want to share this with you viewers. So yeah, okay. So at least Squchan's not doing nothing inappropriate, so that's good. Okay, we're almost at the 20-minute mark, so I might as well just waste time and just talk about the WBO because that's what I was here to talk about. Thank you, Dana White, for making me look up Squchan. Anyway. Okay, so here's a story about the WBO. I'll just wait for the 20-minute mark before we talk about it so I won't get confused. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so here's a story. I've talked about this before and I'll talk about it again. So in 1988, the organization of the WBO became one of the first few organizations that started in 88 before multiple other organizations in the early and late 90s and other 2000s came up with their own organizations. So the WBO came in first and the IBO came in with them, but they never had belts until later of 92, which is how they organized their first ever world title. And by the way, when looking up the IBO belt and trying to look up what their first title, I got to look up what their first title was for the IBO, because the IBO, search all results, IBO, the first ever world title fight by an IBO belt, 655. That's a lot. So in April the 9th, 1992 would be the first time the IBO would organize their first title fight against a guy named Mike Evgen, defeating Louis Lomeli for the IBO World Super Lightweight title. Only 3 fights later, past July, October, with a couple more, is when they would have their first heavyweight title in November that same year, which would be their last title in 92. But we'll talk about that some other time. So, of course, that explains why the WBO got more luckier than the IBO, because it took them a long time to get the belt on the line, while the WBO did not waste any time to recognize their belt. So the WBO's first ever title, and they've organized 1,265 title bouts, which is pretty damn good for 38 years of boxing, so not bad. Okay, what happened here? Don't do that again. So in November the 4th, 1988, Thomas Hearns defeated James Kitchen, which was 3 days before Sugar Ray Leonard defeated Donnie Lalonde for both WBC super middleweight and WBC light heavyweight, which made Sugar Ray Leonard originally the first ever 5 weight class champion, but Thomas Hearns back then was a 4 weight class champion until he won his WBO super middleweight title 3 days before that fight with Sugar Ray Leonard and Donnie Lalonde. So theoretically, Thomas Hearns was the first ever boxer to become a 5 weight class champion, but to be honest, that belt never existed until less than 19 years later in 2007. But when it was recognized, they recognized Thomas Hearns by being the first ever 5 weight class champion. So it's crazy. I know that's confusing for you people, and I don't blame you, but when you look up the information of weight classes on Wikipedia, you'll be surprised. Well, I sure love my cold brew. Delicious. So what happened? Well, a month later, on December the 3rd, is when things changed. Michael Moore defeated Ramzi Hassan for the WBO light heavyweight and went on to defend other belts. And a couple other fighters later in the year would do the same thing, with other fighters fighting for the belt and even retaining the belt. And that's most of the story. Other fighters were fighting for it while Michael Moore was going from domination to domination every year. And that's how good he was. But if you want to talk about the first title fight in the world heavyweight of boxing, well, we would have to go back a lot sooner, but not later, because later in 89, the heavyweight division would finally put up their first ever title fight against a guy named Johnny Dupului, a guy from South Africa who was 24 years old with a 22-2-1 record. Came in around 6'3" as an orthodox fighter. He did lost last year ago originally to a guy named Ronaldo Snipes, who was a dangerous contender back in the day. But Dupului did come in and took his fight. He went all the way to the country of Italy to take on a young 23-0, 30-year-old fighter, 6'3" Orthodox fighter, the one and only Francesco Damiani. And I'll be honest though, Francesco Damiani, he might not be a good fighter, but he's far better than the first Italian world champion in the 30s, who was also beaten by the father of the guy that would have his son later be in the TV show of the Beverly Hillbillies in the 60s after his father passed away, who was Jeffro Bodine. Well, his father, Senior, defeated the Italian champion himself, Primo Carnera. He lost his title against Max Baer Sr. And then time later, a year or so later, in 33 or 34, is when the Cinderella Man of, well, of course, we'll save that for later. Of course, yes, Cinderella Man defeated Max Baer, and then Joe Louis defeated the Cinderella Man, and then all history became changed. So that's the whole story. But when Francisco Damiani and the WBO belt came into play, it was serious. And he went in there, battled his way like never before. And I'll be honest though, watching the fight, I don't want to get into these fights as much, but I will say this though. Francisco was studying the punching. He was a good jabber. He had some great moments, keeping himself together. He was hurting Johnny so much in the fight that he had no chance of even staying for only a couple rounds. Francisco was a dangerous good fighter. He was pretty good for what he was doing. Like the first couple rounds of the fight were just utter domination. Like Johnny from South Africa, who was white, and yes, there are white people in Africa, just like how you say that Australia has white people, and if you haven't heard the song Men at Work, Sail to You, there are black people from Australia before white people, so please be respectful for that, just like Africa. Again, Johnny Dew had no business. He was a guy that was losing out his grip, going forward sometimes, while Francisco was taking his time just studying. Like, even though Francisco was a stiff fighter, standing still sometimes, going for punching, not much, but... And then Johnny was the one bobbing his head, doing this, and going for attack motion, but... To be honest, that was the only thing entertaining about the fight. They were just going forward to each other, pushing him to the ropes. Johnny would sometimes push Francisco to the ropes, and then they would go to a clockwise, counterclockwise situation, and that's all they had. Like, the fight took place in Italy, so the crowd were cheering for Francisco. And looking back at it, again, I'll say this before, Francisco, he's not a bad fighter for what he is. And considering we're having two countries that have won world champions in the past, and this will be the first time a professional boxer from their country has become heavyweight champion for two of their fighters, considering it's the WBO minor weight belt, this was a pretty entertaining fight. Again, like I said before, Johnny was handling himself in the first couple rounds, but again, Francisco was handling the entirety of punching and waiting for the opportunity. Francisco, he did have problems like blocking punches. Sometimes Johnny would go for a heavy punch and Francisco's arm was right here so he could get exposed, which is almost the same thing as Mizuki Hiruda when she took on Mae Solomon. Like, yes, Mizuki Hiruda in the Mae Solomon fight was good. It was a great fight, entertaining for the crowd and to cheer for their countrymen, and Mizuki was putting on the pressure. It was an entertaining, quick fight and a dangerous situation where someone would have gotten hurt. And Mizuki exposing some of the punches that she took in that fight with Mae did scare me a lot, which is how it was a 5-star match, in my opinion. My heart was pumping a lot more than the Alexander Usyk and Rico Verhoeven fight for all the wrong reasons. And because Mizuki was exposing a lot of herself. Like, she has to learn her defensive work a lot more. And if I was the trainer in that gym, I would want to help Mizuki a lot if I was in that gym right now. So again, like I said before, that's the only thing I didn't like about this fight. Similar, like Francisco's can sometimes expose himself, which does explain his only 2 pro defeats were bad. But his knockout, his power, and his deadliness was there. Again, the fight comes to an end when he finally tries to push on jabs and they both throw barrage of punches in the middle of the ring at each other. And then just coming into the third round, when both guys were finally putting in the pressure on each other and for the best they could in the entirety of it, with almost at the 2 minute mark of the fight, halfway through the third round, Johnny goes in, he throws a right, and then Francisco just throws a huge left monstrous hook and then sets up with a right and then throws another left. And Johnny hits the canvas, he rolls on his stomach and just lets the referee count from 10. So, yeah, a devastating knockout, but a great way to start off the World Heavyweight Championship with that of a bang for Francisco. It was a good fight for what it was, and maybe it wasn't. I would say this fight was a lot more of a better win for him than his fight 7 months later on December the 16th when he took on another fighter who had an undefeated record, but his resume wasn't good. His name is Daniel Eduardo Neto. And of course, when you talk about a guy from another country like this, which is Argentina, and I'll say this before and I'll say this again, just because Eastern Asia and South America has 0 world champions, at least Argentina had fighters in their heavyweight division back in the past, even when a guy named Firpo knocked out Jack Dempsey and threw him out of the ring by a knockout. And even though he lost a round later, and a couple of them fought against Muhammad Ali back in the day, there were some decent South American fighters back in the day in the 20th century fighting. And that's pretty good. While they had heavyweight title fights, it does take that Eastern Asia is the only district that has 0 Eastern Asian boxers that have never fought for a heavyweight title. Western Asia, definitely. We had the Uzbekistan fighters and such fighting in that division. The land down under, Northern Asia, which is partly half of Russia. So at the end of the day, Daniel Neto was one of the victims that didn't get the shot for the title, even though he did later fought for a WBO cruiserweight title against a guy named Magna Havana, which he lost by a 12-round decision by dominance, which was a lot better than this fight against him and Francisco because Francisco showed no pressure. Like, Daniel's record with 18 wins in a draw wasn't that good. His resume in 1983, 84, 85, 86, he was a cruiserweight Argentinian champion in his country. And by 89, his fights were against journeymen and nobodies. He had no business being in the ring. The first round came in and Francisco was just finding the groove, finding the mark. Like, don't get me wrong, Daniel showed a lot of heart pushing Francisco to the rope sometimes and sometimes pushes him out, but he was losing. He was off balance. He sometimes throws a punch, but then Francisco, he was the one doing the most of the work, and he was doing a better job in that fight than ever. He was attacking him. He was the aggressor of the fight. And even though Daniel did land a couple okay shots and some good hooks and then some heavy looping crosses once in a while, that is until 25 seconds left of the first round. We get a little bit of a left, right, and then we get a little bit of a barrage here, there, and then another right from Francisco. And Daniel just hits the canvas like he got knocked out by a ton of bricks. Like, don't get me wrong. And it is crazy that the referee continued the fight. And even though Daniel did survive the first round, but this was almost like a rendition of watching Danny Garcia taking on Rod Salka. Like, yes, Rod Salka had a lot of heart coming into the fight, but he just didn't. He never fought tough competitors in that time, and it was just a mismatch of a fight. It wasn't good. And I think it can tell by this performance. All I can say is the second round went on as usual. Francisco went in. He throws some jabs, throws out hooks, pushes him to the ropes, pushes him to the corner. And then the fight ends where he tries to throw some hooks left, and then he throws another here, shot there. And just coming to the first minute of the second round with black trunks, he throws a couple this or that for here. And he's all upstairs until he starts throwing barrage of punches. And then Daniel throws some back. And then he finally throws in a little bit of a sweet chin music for some here. And again, Daniel's defense work wasn't good. And by the way, Daniel looked like a cruiserweight, which he was. He was such a small guy that when you look at the fight, Francisco's body, he was more bigger. He had a big muscle, while Daniel's body was like this. He was a small guy. As a cruiserweight fighter, being in the heavyweight against this guy wasn't good. He just continued throwing on punches, hurting him so much until he threw a barrage of punches, took Daniel to the canvas. The referee said, all right, continue the fight. And then as they do, someone threw the towel in behind of him, only for Francisco to stop himself from throwing a punch because he saw someone threw the towel in. So good for him. All in all, the fight went on as just an easy cherry pick win. It was a mismatch. So what did Francisco do? Well, he did have a couple jobber fights against guys like Tony Morrison and Everett Martin in 1990 by third round and second round knockout, only to take on against Ray Mercer in January 1990. Ray Mercer, 16-0, won the fight, but he had to earn it. Believe me. Now, I don't want to get into the story about this fight because of it, and I don't want to talk about Ray Mercer as much because seeing the heartbreak that happened that same year was like a rendition of what happened to Tommy the Machine Gun, and it's bad. All I know is Francisco was dominating the fight, went on 8 rounds of competition. He was messing with his opponent, throwing out dangerous counter punches. It was a bloody war, and I am thinking about talking about this fight later sometime in the future, which is made by Bob Arum, because there were some interesting fighters on this show, such as Bruce Seldon and Tommy Morrison and Lou Salvares. Some interesting fighters on this show on January the 11th. All we can say is the scorecards read it 79-74, 78-74, 79-73, all favored Francisco winning the fight until around the last 20 or 25, 20 seconds left of the 9th round. Ray Mercer sets off a huge left hook that broke Francisco's nose, sending him down, and then he was counted out by referee Rudy Battle, and Ray Mercer became the new WBO champion. As for Francisco, he would continue boxing and taking on guys like Frankie Swindle, Michael Greer, and Greg Page in 92, which were not good wins. And even though he did have to earn a win against Greg Page by 3 judges scoring it 95-93, even though Greg Page was once docked 2 points in the fight. And then later in April of 93, he took on against Oliver McCall, who was 21-5 at the time, and he was putting on a tough show against him and Oliver McCall. And even though Oliver was doing a better job than Ray Mercer was doing with Francisco, and even though I did believe Francisco won like 2 or 3 rounds in the fight, barely 3 rounds, I guess, Oliver stopped him in the 10-round fight by knocking him down in the 8th round at 1 minute, giving the referee to stop the fight at 1 minute 9 seconds, giving Francisco his final pro defeat and his career coming to an end with 30 wins, 24 knockouts, 2 losses, with 151 rounds and 80% knockout ratio from 1985 to 1993. Francisco would be the last Italian boxer to become world champion as we speak, but again, I would say his legacy should have lived on from this, but again, it wasn't meant to be. It is what it is. As for Ray Mercer, well, again, like I said before, in October the 18th, 1991 would have been the time when Tommy the Machine Gun actually lost his respect for his heavyweight championship in Rocky V. Because every time I see the movie Rocky V and hearing how people and the critics are telling Tommy, you have to start fighting some real opponents and you have to do this, you have to do that. Oh, you can't. Oh, man. Oh, yeah. No. Union Kane might have been a recognized champion, but he was a bum with glass, this or that. Oh, he might win a few fights, but Rocky Balboa, he never will be. This is what this fight reminds me of. Tommy just comes into the fight, throws in everything he had, tires himself out in the 4th round, believing he was going to win the fight quickly. And then Ray Mercer bats every single punch from his jaw. And I'm surprised the referee let the fight continue for that. and then stopped the fight after unanswered punches, giving Ray the win. Seeing Tommy Morrison lose that fight is almost like a rendition of Tommy Gunn getting knocked out by Balboa in the street and losing his respect. And that movie came out in 1990. And this was him just trying to come back to boxing during that moment. So, yeah, again, I don't want to talk about that fight, but all we can say about the WBO belt as well, Ray Mercer would actually vacate the belt in December that same year, signing a bout with Larry Holmes to take on mandatory challenger Michael Moore instead. So Michael Moore got lucky, and I have reviewed the fight with Michael Moore and Burt Cooper. If you want to talk about it, go down to my videos and type in Michael Moore versus Burt Cooper. All I can say is that was a pretty damn good fight. And even though I gave that fight 4 stars out of 5, I'm also going to make another review page. I've also made an observer for myself called the 7-paragraph observer, which I just made last Saturday on the 30th, which is page number 1. It doesn't have anything to do with the Burt Cooper and Michael Moore, but all we can say is Michael Moore won the fight tough, dangerously, and it had to be one of the first greatest fights for WBO. Unfortunately, he went on to sign off with another promoter, left Emmanuel Stewart. And Burt Cooper, well, he went on to do his own stuff. And, little spittle. But yeah, he would sign on with Teddy Atlas until he decided to, on February the 8th, 1993, Michael Moore would vacate the WBO title without having a single title defense with it. He did had a couple non-title fights in 92 and 93. I remember for random, he went on to one trainer and then went to another, and then someone told him, hey, bring Teddy Atlas over, and then he went on. Yeah, so it's saying that he vacated the title because he wanted to be ranked by other sanctioning bodies because, like I said before, the WBO is still a minor weight belt. So 4 months later, on June the 7th, Tommy Morrison finally got his big break. He took on against George Foreman, and, well, I will say this, though. The fight was dangerous, even though Foreman got deducted a point in round 10. For reasons, I'm trying to look that up. He was deducted a point in round 10 for a low blow. The entire fight was Foreman being a 7-5 favorite, believing that Morrison's professional defeat against Ray Mercer was his ending career. But if you want to count this being a major belt in 1993, which is, this means that Tommy Morrison became the first ever blooded white guy in the USA, born in the USA, to become a World Heavyweight Championship since Rocky Marciano in 52 and retired in 56. Even though Rocky Marciano was born in the USA, his family were Italian immigrants, so mostly an Italian himself, but still. So yeah, Rocky Marciano was like the white hope of the Italian, and Tommy Morrison was the white hope of America. So again, white hope either way, just forget about it. All I can say is Morrison didn't get paid a lot of money for this. Foreman did. Foreman wouldn't fight for another full year and a half until his Michael Moore incident. Even though Morrison did use constant moving against Foreman, but did start throwing out multitude of punches, he landed 260 out of 572 in that fight, with Foreman landing 225 out of 400. And a lot of those rounds were won easily by Morrison. 2 of the judges had it 117 and 110. Another judge had it 118 to 109, favoring Morrison as the win. Unfortunately for Tommy Morrison, I want you viewers to know I have talked about the Michael Bennett fight in October of the 29th of 93, when Michael Bennett scored a first round knockout against Morrison 3 times and won the fight. But there is one other fight that was just an abysmal, and that was Tommy Morrison fighting against Tim Tomaszek. So Tim Tomaszek came into the fight out of the crowd because Mike Williams, the original opponent for Morrison that night, refused to leave his dressing room. This fight dude, like the Michael Bennett fight was terrible, but this was embarrassing for Morrison to cherry pick some fights. And even though this fight, he wasn't meant to fight this person. And again, I don't know why, I don't know why Tommy Morrison thought having a couple title defenses was a good idea. Like, this fight with Tim Tomaszek should have been. I can't believe Tim Tomaszek lasted 4 rounds in this fight. It was the most embarrassment of just ridiculousness. Like, now, even though Tim Tomaszek would be on the Saturday Night Live show on TV with, I think it was Dave Letterman, or he would also be on TV with, not Johnny Carson, but the guy that took over for Johnny Carson, Jay Leno. I think he was on the Jay Leno show as well at the time, because I remember. And Jay Leno and other people did found hilariousness for Tim Tomaszek, because Tim Tomaszek just had that ridiculous look on his face. He was a joker. Every time he goes on TV, he has that funniness. They have that famous photo of him putting his glove like this and putting his hand like this and go, ah! So Tim Tomaszek was like the jokester of heavyweight boxing. And just seeing him have a title shot with this is so ridiculous. Like, even though there's videos on YouTube stated that this fight and the entirety that you've never seen before, believe me, I actually saw this on YouTube about 10 years ago, back in 2016, after I graduated. And there was a video on YouTube called Gato Valento, which is the video I'm watching just about right now. And I'm looking at the video right now. And just, like, guys, I usually write stuff on my notes and talk about this, but this one right here is ridiculous, because it just makes me seem like that this fight's ridiculous. Now, I will be honest, the first round of the fight, Tim Tomaszek was dancing around, throwing out some bye punches once in a while, and he was giving Tommy Morrison a run for his money to go through the rounds. So at least Tim Tomaszek had the audacity. He had moments. He was actually landing out some punches, and he was going for some grooves here while Morrison was doing this, duck, this or that, and then swings and a miss. So there were moments that Tim was making the fight somewhat interesting, which would have made you wonder what would have happened if Tim Tomaszek won this fight and became WBO champion. This guy would have been one of the greatest, in my opinion. I gotta respect Tim Tomaszek for being in the fight. He started the fight out strong for Morrison. And even though this guy's born in Indiana, which is where NASCAR and IndyCar racing belongs, which is where I want to live, or Florida, or Japan, or Brazil, or Oklahoma, where tornadoes are from, and he also lives in Green Bay, Wisconsin, as we speak. And by the way, Tim Tomaszek at this moment was just not on his game plan as much. Like, again, he was starting out the fight strong from rounds to rounds. It wasn't a bad fight for starting. He was going for the attack formation. He was doing a good job. Yes, he was an overweight fighter. And I guess Tommy Morrison was waiting for him to get tired out, because he knew that he was attacking him early on in the first round, because he wasn't in shape. Because was Tim Tomaszek expecting him to get a title fight that night because Mike Williams didn't want to exit out of his dressing room? I don't think no one expected that. I just don't think so. But again, the second round is the most famous moment, where we're only 30 or so seconds into the fight. Morrison throws a heavy punch, and then Tim goes, and then he throws back another punch, and then Morrison comes out of nowhere, goes left. Let's watch the footage. So Morrison goes on with the left, missed right, and then after going for a couple grabs and a couple jabs here by Tim, he grabs him by the head, and then he just starts giving him a little bit of a tap, tap, tap on Morrison, and then dumps this as well. And the referee's name, by the way, just to point this out, and I love the photo they have on BoxRec right now that has friggin' Tim's facial expression. It's ridiculous. But yeah, the referee, Danny Campbell, warns him for not doing that. They both touch gloves and let the fight continue. But Yeah, this is the moment when you realize that Tim Tomaszek did not deserve to be in the title picture, but at least he was throwing punches in that fight, even though Morrison was ducking them. And even though he was getting hit by the ropes, I'm surprised that Tim Tomaszek lasted 4 rounds in that fight, which was a lot better than seeing Frank Sanchez give 2 rounds to Richard Torres 2 weeks ago, which is not bad considering this was for a heavyweight title, a minor weight title, which is now major. So I gotta give credit to Tim. He did make the fight interesting and remembered. And even though the first couple rounds were somewhat interesting, he put on a good performance for some stuff. And even though there are dumb moments where there's one moment with 50 seconds of the fight where they started clinching close to each other, and then he started grabbing out his head, and then Morrison just lands out a heavy left on him, and he just dances around, puts his head like this while he ducks like this, but Morrison still connects a perfect punch on him. And then time later, into the second round, they just do nothing but just start clinching and bumping their heads to each other until Morrison lands another punch with 7 seconds left of the fight, and Tim just puts his hand up for some reason, and Morrison doesn't give a damn. He just starts out punching him. And then we get to the third round, and at this moment, for some hilarious reason, Tim throws some body punches, and then Morrison hits out another right and hurts him. And then Tim goes like this, dances like this, and then throws out a right and then gets another left. And then he does a full 180, and now he's humping Morrison in the back, for crying out loud, and grabbing him by the arm. And Danny, the referee, is giving him warning not to do that. At this moment, the crowd, the announcers are just finding this fight now ridiculous. And Tim is now going for body punches, and Morrison is finally putting on some good work here, which is somewhat interesting. And now Tim is doing nothing but just throwing everything. He's ducking out his body. He's trying to cover his face in a new boxing style, and he still gets hit. Like, that's the entirety of the fight for Tim. Like, after the second round was over, the third round became a circus of just ridiculousness. Even though Tim was still throwing punches, Morrison was more the aggressor of the fight. Like 50 seconds left of the third round, he finally he pushes away when Morrison hits a left. He ducks away, throws a left jab, and then starts hugging Morrison again, and just starts using his glove to knock him on the head again for putting him on a headlock. And then he even tries to stick his left hand out to have Morrison touch his glove, but Morrison doesn't want any of that because he knows he's an idiot. And by the way, you gotta watch his interview, because the way Tim talks, and they even have that famous catchphrase of how Tim talks, and even has that funny catchphrase he says on David Letterman or something. Like, even though Tim was drunk at the time, and even though he might have ate a lot of food, I'm still surprised that he actually put in an okay performance for how his body was feeling that night. And even though he might have not been in a good shape, even if he was ready for this fight, I don't think he would have done good. But again, it is surprising for what he did, and I gotta give him credit. Again, the fight was ridiculous, but looking back at it, Morrison was just upset after coming into the end of the third round. He just wanted this entire dumb fight to come to an end. And even though Tim was still throwing barrage of punches during the start of the fourth round, it just didn't stop them from just doing ridiculous stuff over and over again until Morrison finally throws in his body punches. And then 2 minutes left of the fourth round, he finally grabs onto Morrison's arm, and then he starts to shake his head like this when the referee finally breaks him up. And for some ridiculous reason, it just seemed like for Morrison, I don't know why Morrison was letting the fight continue for how long this was. He even grabs his arm again 30 seconds later and then lets go of it. And then they just start throwing out for clinches and multitude of punches. And when Morrison attacks him again, he grabs Morrison's arm again to stop him from punching. Morrison, if Morrison could handle 12 rounds with Foreman, but he couldn't handle this type of incompetence with a fighter like this, why would you ever want Morrison to fight Lennox Lewis for a title when you see a performance like this? even if Tommy Morrison did defeat Michael Bennett 2 months later in October, I don't know how you could live up to the expectation of Morrison versus Lewis. I would think Lewis would have beat the crap out of Morrison either way in 93 or in 94, even if Morrison did defeat Michael Bennett. And he wouldn't even win in 95 neither, when he did finally took on Lewis. So the fight comes to an end when Morrison finally throws barrage of punches and sends him down with 24 seconds left of the fourth round. He finally gets back up in the count of 4. And at this moment, I'm surprised that Tim is smiling. He's enjoying himself. But again, he's just throwing everything stupidly. Morrison finally throws in a couple more of his own punches. And for some reason, with 5 seconds left of the fight, they're finally just standing still until out of nowhere, Morrison throws one heavy duty of a left punch, which missed by an inch. I don't know how it didn't hit Tim. And the bell rings, and Tim walks to Tommy's corner for some weird reason. And that's it. But for some reason, the fight ends when Tomaszek's team decided to just wave the fight out. They just let the fight wave out to the end of the fourth round. They don't get back to the fifth round, giving Morrison his win. Again, I am surprised. I'm sure Tim Tomaszek would have let the fight continue. He did got back up on his feet to argue for this, but his crew, everyone just didn't want the fight to continue. He still raises his hands in the air for the heck of it because he still stayed in the fight. I'm sure he would have stayed in for a couple more rounds and the referee would have stopped the fight. So I'll give him credit. To be honest, I'm going to rate this fight a 2.5 out of 5 stars, which is 5 out of 10. It's a ridiculous fight, and you know what? I was still entertained by it. I'm sure if they would have went... I will say this, though. Tim Tomaszek, he's not a great fighter, but I am surprised that he put in an interesting amount of performances on Tommy Morrison that day. So, yeah, looking at Tommy Morrison fighting that day in August the 30th made you wonder how bad he was 2 months later against Michael Bennett. And what's terrible about Michael Bennett is that even though he became champion on October the 29th, a born British fighter living in Brooklyn, New York, decided to leave the USA to go back to his country on March the 29th to take on an undefeated 25-0 fighter that goes by the name of Herbie Hyde. And if you want to know who Herbie Hyde is the youngest heavyweight champion in the country of the UK. And just to let you know how old Herbie Hyde was in March of 94, he was 22 years old, which means that even though Moses Atama is coming close to at the age of 20 years old right now, and he's at 21 years old right now, almost surpassing Floyd Patterson, if he could stay at 22 years old for just a little bit longer to fight for a title before Herbie Hyde, Moses Atama can still make history as a heavyweight champion, as the youngest heavyweight champion in the world of British boxing. That right there, I could say, is still money. And by the way, if I can look up the resume here, at 22 years old, Herbie Hyde, wow, on Wikipedia, / of the World Heavyweight Boxing Championship records and statistics do not show Herbie Hyde as a champion. That right there is disrespectable. They don't even show him as the top 5 youngest in a title reign, for crying out loud. I don't know why they did that. For some weird reason, I don't know why they didn't do that, because that would make him as the 4th. Technically, Herbie Hyde, I gotta look up Herbie Hyde and understand how old he was, because on March the 19th, 1994, Herbie Hyde was born in August the 27th of 1971, one day after my birthday. So 1991, he was 21. 93, he was 22. September, October, November, December, January, February. So he was 22 years old and 6 months old, which would have made him the 4th youngest champion passing Joe Louis and Jack Dempsey from 23 and 24 years old. So technically, Herbie Hyde is the fourth youngest boxer in history as a heavyweight champion. So technically, Moses Atama still has 1 year left of him, and if he doesn't get a title fight next year or something, at his age, he is not going to surpass anyone. He can still be a top 10 youngest champions if he makes it before 24 years old on Klitschko, but again, I just don't see that. I don't see that happening ever. All in all I can say about Herbie Hyde, he went into this fight like never before. Herbie just went into this fight outboxing, out punching out Michael. He went in there, threw down huge punches. And by the way, the promoter's name is Barry Hearn, who was involved in this promotional fight. And this would be Barry Hearn's first ever world title heavyweight championship win as a promoter in his history. Only his son, Eddie Hearn, would do a lot better than his father, but I gotta give his father credit. Michael Bennett got knocked out in the third round. The second round was his better round. He was getting outfloored. He got huge with a huge punch. There was a moment in the fight where someone said that someone said that Michael bit Herbie in the ear or something, or somewhere in the body. I don't know. Someone said that Michael bit him and then illegally hit him for some reason. In the seventh round, coming into the end of the final of the seventh round, he gets floored again, gets hurt, and the referee stops the fight. For some reason, nothing happened after that, but then for some reason, Michael would be sent to the hospital and fighting for his life, as he would be in a coma for 4 days, nearly passing away. Surprisingly, he would recover from this, spending several more weeks in the hospital, and unfortunately, he never boxed again. Again, I hope Herbie Hyde is doing okay, not knowing that his opponent was fighting for his life, but luckily, at least all ends that it ends well. So, yeah. As for Herbie Hyde himself, he held on to the title until March the 11th when he took on against former undisputed champion Riddick Bowe. All I could say about Riddick Bowe in this entire promotion of himself, this entire fight for Riddick Bowe just came in. He outboxed Herbie in winning rounds. He was scoring out points, scoring punches here or there. He was dominating him like he wasn't even there. By the way, George Luis Gonzalez was also there that same night, and also Brian Nielsen, who was 16-0 at the time. And we're going to talk about Brian Nielsen, the pastry from Denmark, next time in the next episode for his IBO. But yeah, that's crazy. Riddick goes out there. It stated that Herbie Hyde did win a couple rounds in the first, but then he got injured, got knocked down twice in the third, again in the fourth, got knocked down once in the fifth. And then in the sixth round, he gave up. Riddick was out hurting him so much. I just can't watch that fight because it was bloody. It was not good. Unfortunately, 3 months later, in 1995, George Luis Gonzalez, his rival opponent in the amateur, would have an argument. He had a huge bad temper. George, who was actually from the country of Cuba, and he's also known for his sixth professional fight against Big Ben Smith, the guy known for throwing wild punches, and then that famous moment where announcer stated that Big Ben didn't even get clocked, which I think we already know that fight. Yes, that fight was also involved as George Gonzalez. And looking at George Luis Gonzalez in 91 fighting that person, it looked like he was a nice guy. And then comes in 1995 and he has a dangerous temper, a weird haircut, and he's fighting Riddick Bowe. This was not a good thing for him. Riddick Bowe also lasted with him for 6 rounds. He outboxed him, outhurted him, knocked him down into the 6th round, and George never became the same fighter again. Unfortunately, Riddick Bowe would have a non-title fight for his trilogy against Holyfield, which he won at the time, but by May of 96, he would strip the title for rejecting to be with Don King in a purse offer. So this is the moment when boxing gets more ridiculous. Henry Akinwande, in June the 29th, 1996, would get his first title shot against Jeremy Williams. Jeremy Williams, a guy that's not much of a great American fighter, while Henry Akinwande went in there with a 29-0-1 record. All you could say about Henry is that he wasn't really much of an entertaining fighter, but he managed to last his opponent 3 rounds in this fight and did a good job. The worst part about it is that it got more boring, because later in November the 9th of 1996, the same exact night with Holyfield versus Tyson 1 and Michael Moore defeating Francis Botha that same night, Henry goes into 10 rounds, drops Alexander Zolkin, his opponent, who had a 24-2 record, drops him down to the 4th round, and then got cut in the 10th round, which Richard Steele and everyone else decided to stop the fight because of the cut. The fight, again, wasn't that entertaining, but far better than his next fight in January the 11th, which is Scott Welch. And I am thinking about talking about January the 11th, 1997, some other time. All I can say is Henry dominated the fight like Scott Welch wasn't there. Scott Welch had no business being in the title picture, but you know what? He got what he did, and that's all I have to say about that fight. Unfortunately, Henry Akinwande would actually vacate the title days later on January the 29th because he wanted to request a fight with the WBC mandatory with the Lewis and Oliver McCall fight, and that's why he did that. We already know what happened. Some days ago, Mike Tyson bit the ear off of Holyfield. Mills Lane gave him a warning. Didn't do a damn good job about it. Stopped the fight by DQ. Days later, Mills Lane comes back and refs another fight with Akinwande and Lewis, and that fight became terrible as it is. But surprisingly, on June the 28th of 97, around that time, with all of that mayhem happening, Herbie Hyde gets another opportunity to fight for the WBO belt against former heavyweight champion himself, Tony Tucker. And guess what? Herbie Hyde demolished Tony Tucker in 2 rounds, dropping him down 3 times in the second, winning the WBO belt again. And if you think his title was a fluke, guess what? Herbie comes back, and out of nowhere, even after Herbie Hyde went back to win a couple fights against some nobodies in 96, winning against Tony Tucker in June, 1998 would be his most dominant run. He comes in April the 14th, the 18th of 98, fights against Damon Reed, and he outboxes him in 52 seconds. He throws out barrage of punches, brings him down. Damon gets back up, throws another heavy left, drops him down at 50 seconds of the fight, with Ruby Battle, the referee, waving the fight at 50 seconds. But they say 52 seconds. Here's the thing. 8 years later, in 2005, it stated that also for the WBO belt at the time, Lamont Brewster took on against Andrew Gloat, and that fight ended in the first round at 52 seconds. But it stated that the refs and other people waived the fight just around the 51 or 52 second mark when Gloat got knocked out. And that fight ended quickly as well. People to this day believe that Herbie Hyde holds the record for the quickest fight in a heavyweight title fight. That's ridiculous. And then 5 months later, he takes on a random guy named Willie Fisher, a 21-1-1 fighter, and he outboxes him in 2 rounds. And guess what happened in June of 1999? He goes back, takes on 24-0 Vitaly Klitschko, and he dominates him in the first round. And then in round 2, Vitaly Klitschko says, "Not selling that, brother." So he outboxes Herbie Hyde and knocks him down by a KO in 1 minute 14 seconds, ending Herbie Hyde's run as a two-time champion. Yeah, not good. And as for the rest of Herbie Hyde's boxing career, his last 11 years in boxing, when he came out of retirement in 2001 after his second pro defeat, he loses a fight against a 19-5 fighter by second round, loses against someone else a couple years later in 2004. He takes some hiatuses once in a while. He did become a WBC International Cruiserweight champion at one point against some interesting fighters. He never lost another fight again, but by 2010, he had an injured when he got one of his eyebrows cut during a prize fight tournament in the quarterfinals, so he was out of the tournament. But yeah, Herbie Hyde, 49, 43, and 4 losses in his career, and 21 years of boxing, and born in Nigeria. Yeah, not bad for Herbie Hyde as a born Nigerian fighter. I did not know he was born in Nigeria. Oh yeah, and as for Vitaly Klitschko himself, the end of 1999 ended when Vitaly outboxed Ed Mahoney in October the 9th, knocks him down twice in Germany in the third round, and wins. He defeats Obed Sullivan 1 month after Lennox Lewis became undisputed on Holyfield. Finishes the fight by the end of round 9 with Obed Sullivan not answering the bell for round 10. And that right there is the end of the story of the WBO. What do I have to say about the WBO? I will say this, though. Considering all this being said, Michael Bennett, Michael Moore, Ray Mercer, Francisco Demania, Tommy Morrison, a little bit of Michael Bennett, Herbie Hyde, Henry Akinwande, and Riddick Bowe, of course, and Vitaly Klitschko. All I can say is, not bad. Even though Vitaly Klitschko did lose on April the 1st against Chris Bird, but I've already talked about that before. And my slushy is getting wetter by the minute. Here's my final thoughts. My final thoughts are this. The WBO, even though Herbie Hyde is the only boxer to become a two-time heavyweight champion, Henry Akinwande, Herbie Hyde, and Vitaly Klitschko tied the record for the most title defenses at 2, and that happened in 96, 97 to 99, and so that right there says a lot when it comes to craziness. And even though Francisco and Michael Bennett and a little bit of Herbie Hyde, Henry Akinwande, they're not terrible in their own rights. And even though most of these American boxers did manage to get a piece of a title, and even though British boxing got their own title fights and managed to have Barry Hearn to finally get recognized as a promoter to become heavyweight champion, and then his son Eddie Hearn finally got bigger in his career, and he's still fighting for boxers with Anthony Joshua. It was not bad for what it was. I gotta give credit. It was decent for what it was. All I can say is it was a pretty with these 9 pro boxers are pretty much legendary fights. I think these are 9 great champions which did a good job. Even though Francisco and Michael Bennett and a little bit of Henry Akinwande and others got lucky getting these titles. And they might be recognized for the WBO, even though if they were minor weight belts back in the day. But you got to give them credit. It is what it is, and I got to give them credit for doing a good job for being champions. All I can say about this for the WBO belt, decent, it is. So I will say, though, the 90s in pro boxing for the WBO is pretty good. And watching some of the fight footage from Herbie Hyde and his utter dominance and his knockout wins, which I'm going to let you viewers watch it for yourself, because those wins he put up are so damn good, I can't even review them because they're good. And again, I am going to talk about Henry Akinwande in his last title defense because of how horrible it is and such another time, so I'm saving that for later. And I am going to talk about another title fight on this show as well one day as well. But for now, Thank you for watching. Next time, we are going to review the IBO belt. Is the IBO going to do better in the heavyweight in the 90s than the WBO? Well, we will stay tuned next time.